So today we are starting our second unit, the cardiovascular system, and we've already sort of surveyed everyone. It deals with the heart, deals with blood vessels like arteries and veins. We talked about blood, and we'll talk about what blood is composed of, all the different types of cells. Even though blood is a liquid, it's got a lot of solid components in it, and we'll do that in probably next week. We'll do a dissection coming up in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and yeah, this is something new. So the cardiovascular system, as an overview, we're going to start any unit from here on out. We start with structures of that body system and its functions. So we're going to talk first about the blood vessels. So as an overview, there are arteries, and arteries become smaller and become smaller arteries called arterioles. And arteries have one job, and that is to carry blood away from the heart and toward capillaries or capillaries, depending on how you pronounce it. Now, notice there is a word there in that sentence or in that point that starts with the letter A, and that is the word away. So remember, arteries take blood away. Arteries away, always. 95% of the time, maybe even 98% of the time, they carry oxygenated blood away from the heart, but not every time. So you can't rely on the fact that you can't rely on the statement that arteries carry oxygenated blood, because it's not true entirely. It's most of the time true, just not entirely true. But one thing that it is entirely true is that arteries carry blood away from the heart. And then there are capillaries or capillaries. Those are really tiny blood vessels. They are 1 millimeter thick in diameter. And what they do is they allow for an exchange of substances between your tissues, your body tissues, and the blood that's flowing past the body tissues. Now, if the blood vessel, the capillary, is super small, 1 millimeter thick, the flow of blood through those capillaries is very slow. But that's okay, because we need slow travel of blood to exchange substances. Now, what do you think is exchanged at the tissue level? Oxygen for Keenan? Carbon dioxide is correct. Good job. Oxygen is exchanged for carbon dioxide, and nutrients are exchanged for Faith? That's right, wastes. Nutrients are exchanged for waste. So cells are kind of like tiny human bodies anyway. Like whatever you eat, it creates waste that you have to expel. You go to the bathroom, right? Cells are the same. It takes in like really simple nutrients, they use them up, and then they have waste that they need to get rid of. So that's capillaries. And lastly, there are veins, which they're actually smaller veins are called venules, just like smaller arteries are called arterioles. And veins have the job of carrying blood to the heart. So the direction is carrying blood to the heart for veins. So obviously arteries and veins have different jobs. Any questions about that slide? Arteries, capillaries, veins. Okay. And last point there is blood vessels require oxygen and nutrients just like all other tissues as well. Okay, moving on. In this diagram, it's a really good diagram, and I want you to take a look there and tell me what's the big difference that you see when you have the cross section on the left here of an artery and a vein here on the right. What's a big difference there? Sorry? Inside. Sorry? There's a valve. Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to see if I can find my cursor here, but I don't. This thing is not connected. Okay, so there is, right, that's correct. Oh, that's what I was looking for. Thank you, Val. The this layer here is much thicker on the left here on the artery than it is on the vein, which is just a thin, that's a muscle layer. So arteries have the ability to squeeze, kind of like when you squeeze a toothpaste tube. Arteries can squeeze a little bit, but they're not as strong as veins. Okay, I'm just gonna unplug my tablet and replug it in and see if it works. Oh, it does. Good. So let's do it in neon green. Yeah? Yeah, let's do that with. Okay. So what we talked about here is on the left, right here, the width there is due to a muscle layer. Is much thicker in arteries rather than in veins, as shown on the right. So that's one big thing. And there's a good reason for that. The good reason there is that we need arteries to push blood throughout your whole body. Up here on the left, on the right, this is a capillary bed or capillary bed. It's purple because you get the mixing of red from arteries, oxygenated blood most of the time, and veins, which are deoxygenated blood, which is typically blue. So it's called a capillary bed or capillary bed. And it's kind of what looks like a net or a weaving there. But again, because those are capillaries or capillaries there, they're very tiny and they allow for exchange of substances, oxygen for carbon dioxide and nutrients for wastes. The last thing that was identified is this thing, the valve. So there's one side there and the other side there. And what do valves do for pipes? Radek? They open and close them. Great. It's the same thing for veins. So they open and close when they need passage of blood through them. They have a purpose, and that's to prevent backflow of blood, because veins, as you saw, or as you see here, don't have much muscle layer in them. So they aren't as strong, so they can't push blood as strongly as arteries or arterioles. So they need valves to prevent any backflow of blood, because you don't want blood pooling in your legs or your arms or any particular part of your body. But yeah, so there's a valve there, and it is stated right there. Any questions about that? Okay, so I'll clear my drawings and we will continue on here. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about arteries. And we kind of saw a whole bunch of this information on that last slide in the diagram. So the walls of arteries have three layers. The first is an innermost layer that's called endothelium. So the next line you don't necessarily need to know for this course, but if you end up going to higher level courses of biology in university, you'll learn about cell types and cell shapes. So simple squamous epithelium means like they're a really straightforward, simple cell. Squamous or squamous means like they're squished or flat. Epithelium is just a type of cell layer. And then basement membrane means that it's got like a foundation to it. But you don't need to know that for any test or quiz for this course. But it's got an innermost layer. It's got a middle layer, which is the thickest. And that's the thickest because it has muscles. It's got a smooth muscle layer for opening and closing the diameter or the insides of the blood vessel of the artery. And it also has connective tissue in larger arteries because large arteries have a high pressure in them. And they're kind of like, there's fire hydrants every now and then when firefighters connect the hose, it's a massive hose that has tons of water pressure in it, and if they weren't holding onto it, it'd be sort of like wiggling all over the place. So that's kind of like the big arteries in your body. they have a high pressure. So in order to stop that, they have a connective tissue that stretches so that instead of a tube wiggling all over the place, it may shimmy and shake just a little bit, but it stays relatively where it should, because you don't want that happening in your body. And lastly, there's an outer layer where there's more connective tissue that's like more fibrous, it's more steady. It's really keeping it in place there. Largest artery in your body. Anybody know what it's called? It is called the aorta. So it comes right out of the heart. That is the aorta, the largest artery. You would also already know that if you read chapter 12.1 in the notes. So the largest artery is the aorta. It comes right out of the heart. And with this model that I have on my desk with the heart, it is this big one in red here. I'll show you there. So it's a big one in red. People who are at home, I'll show you in class tomorrow. But it's this big artery. It basically has 3 branches at the top that go up to your head and neck, your arms, as well as your upper chest. If anybody's broken their collarbone, that's called your clavicle. One of these branches is called the subclavian artery. So that's the aorta. And the aorta branches off upwards to your head and neck and all those areas, but it also then curves down behind the heart, called the descending aorta, and then provides blood to the lower half of your body. Arteries branch into smaller ones called arterioles. The middle layer is mostly smooth muscle, and it's important in control of blood pressure. All right, everybody's okay? Moving on to capillaries. So capillaries will join blank to blank. You already know the answer to this. They'll join what to what? Emma? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Lena. Arteries to veins, or even smaller, arterioles to venules. But you're right. They connect the oxygenated, most of the time oxygenated arteries or arterioles to the most of the time deoxygenated venules or veins. Their walls consist of a single layer of endothelium, which is a single layer of cells, because it needs to be very thin to exchange oxygen for carbon dioxide and nutrients for waste. Oh, which is a spoiler for the next little line here, allows for exchange of substances, oxygen for carbon dioxide, and nutrients for wastes. So you can write that in the blank there. So the next line says the total surface area of capillary or capillary beds in your body is blank square meters. Now, a square meter, as I grab a meter stick, is this amount. This by this into a square. So you guys can like try to figure out how big that area is. Any guesses? Some people probably know this from reading the textbook. How many square meters of area your capillaries, all your tiny capillaries, you have so many of them that they take up this amount of square meterage or area. Vera, give me any number. No, that's not a number. You have to give me a number. 20? Okay, that's definitely a number. Lena? 150? Shannon? 200? And Keenan? 24. The correct answer is 6,000. You guys are way off. Not that, I'm not surprised, because that's ridiculous to think there are 6,000 of these in terms of area in your body. And that just really goes to, it may be like unfathomable to you, but it really goes to show how many capillaries you have, because they serve every single cell in your body, every single tissue, every area of your body needs to be served with a blood supply. So 6,000 of those, that's crazy. All right, not all capillary beds are open at any one time. Sometimes they have to shut it down and sort of block it off, so it allows for exchange of nutrients for wastes and oxygen for carbon dioxide. So they have what's called an arteriovenous shunt, which allows capillaries to be bypassed. It's basically, it just shuts a door, so then it allows time to exchange gases and nutrients for wastes. An arteriovenous shunt. Now you'll see that in the next slide here. An anatomy of a capillary bed zoomed in quite a bit. Let me just get this up here, rocking and rolling. Okay, so you have here the blood flow coming from the bottom left, and it will flow along the course of this. Let's move this out of the way. If I can move it, that is. Ooh, someone's writing me a message. Emma, I will send you a link afterwards, okay? Okay. So the blood flow continues up along this arterial, but it also branches off to the capillary areas, which again serve all your tissues, all your cells. So they'll go that way, that way, that way. But if an area needs a little bit of a blockage, it'll create a blockage right here. Let's do this and create a big blockage right here. So it'll be like, stop there because we need to exchange the blood on the other side of there. So like here. So just as a blockage allows it to bypass. For Emma at home, were you copying out everything, or because there were only like 3 blanks there, no? 4 blanks, 6,000 square meters, oxygen, carbon dioxide, nutrients, wastes for that big blank, and then arterioles to venules. But I'll still send you a link later. Okay, moving on. Veins. So veins we've kind of talked about a little bit. They have less developed muscle and connective tissue layers than compared to arteries. And because they're not so rigid because of muscles, they tend to be distensible. And distensible is another word for stretchy. So yeah, they're stretchy. So like Radek, you know, you have your stretchy pants, your Lululemons that you wear sometimes. They're comfy, right? They're breathable, they're comfy. They're stretchy, and that's what kind of veins are like. They're distensible, so they're stretchy. That allows for them to open up a little wider if they need, if they have more blood flowing through them at a certain time. Molly and Emma say they didn't have a booklet. Right. I think I was away yesterday and didn't write because I had a sub when I was in a meeting. Okay, you'll get your booklets tomorrow. Okay, so they can expand to store blood. Any guess what percentage of blood is on the venous side or on the vein and venule side at any one time? Guessing numbers time. Faye, give me a percentage. 20%, okay. Keenan? 68. That's a very, like a Jaromir Jagr. It's very specific. It's a hockey player who wore number 68. Taylor, any guess? 70%? Tegan, you want to give a guess? Not really? Okay, that's no worries. Well, last guess. 25. The answer is 70%. So here's the reason why a majority of your blood is going to be in the venous side or the veins and venules side. The reason is because you got to remember, arteries have muscles and a lot thicker of a muscle layer. So they're going to be pushing blood all the time, squeezing. While veins won't be squeezing as much. They're a bit weaker, so they're like, I'll try and squeeze. So that means you're always having arteries pushing blood. So they're actually moving blood quite quickly, whereas veins can't move blood as quickly. And they also have the valves there as well to keep storing blood in there. All right, moving onwards. Veins have valves. We've talked about that as well. And those allow to prevent backflow of blood. You also have skeletal muscle or skeletal muscle, depending on how you pronounce it, that squeezes blood upwards through the valves. The largest valves in your body are kind of like the aorta, but they aren't the aorta. There's two of them. There's the superior and the inferior vena cava. They are big veins that return blood to the heart. So they, in plural, would be vena cavae. And basically the superior vena cava drains the head, neck, shoulders, and arms of blood and brings it back to the heart. And your inferior vena cava brings blood up from your body, from your torso, your pelvis, your knees, your legs, your feet. Emma, you probably should stay because we're not going to go over this information tomorrow. This is, we're still going to be synchronous, so we're going to move on to the next lesson tomorrow. Everybody have that set of notes there? Okay, moving on. Structure of the heart. Let's see how much time we have. We're good. The structure of the heart is such that you've learned about this maybe in grade 8, grade 7 or grade 8, and there are 4 chambers of the heart. There are, anybody remember the names of them? It starts with an A for 2 of them and a V for the other 2. And if you don't remember, that's okay, because you're going to learn them now. The structure of the heart is, I'll draw them for you. I'll do a little drawing. Everyone loves drawings, right? All right, let's do it in pink. Pink's a good color. I'll do it here. So your heart is like, kind of like this. Oh, that's good. That's good. And then you have, we'll split it up into 4 rooms or chambers like this. So you got to remember that when you're looking at a heart in any diagram, you're looking at a heart like it's sitting in someone's chest. So the right side of the heart is going to be the left side when you're looking at it, because it's not your left or your right, it's the person's heart. So the right side of the heart would be this side, and the left side would be this side. So people at home aren't seeing what I'm pointing at, but this is the right side, even though it's obviously the left to you. And this is the left side, because to that person who has that heart in their chest, that's their right side and their left side. So over here, this is the right atrium. You may remember the atrium and the right ventricle. Blood flows from the right atrium to the right ventricle, and then it leaves the heart and goes to the lungs. It comes back from the lungs and goes to the left atrium, which then pushes blood to the left ventricle, and then it leaves the heart via the aorta and supplies oxygenated blood to the whole body. Hi, Molly. Yeah, I can do that. That's no problem, or at least the slides. Okay. So let's move on with notes here. There are 4 chambers of the heart. There are 2 upper atria. Atria is the plural for atrium. So there's a left and right atrium, but you have 2 atria. And there are 2 lower ventricles. And each pair of chambers is separated by what's called a septum. I'll draw that in for you as well. Let's draw a septum in, let's still keep it in pink, but we'll keep it a bit thicker of a pink. So this is your septum right here. It's a big thick wall, separates the left side of the heart from the right side of the heart. So if you wanted to label that, you could label that as well. This is the septum. So the septum separates the left and the right sides. So in terms of the heart wall, a major portion is called the myocardium, and that's cardiac muscle. So myocardium. The inner surfaces of the heart are lined with what we call endocardium. Endo is inside, kind of like how we learned about endocytosis last unit. You have your endocardium. Oops. You have your endocardium on the inside. And you also have your pericardium, which is on the outside. So pericardium is kind of like on the outside, the perimeter. So it's pericardium, perimeter. So those are the three layers of the heart wall. One of your layers is one of your sides of your heart, or one of these chambers is much, much stronger than the others. Any guesses which of these four, left atrium, right atrium, left ventricle, or right ventricle, is the most muscular part of your heart? Right atrium, not quite. Good guess. Shannon, you look like you have something to say. No? It is the left ventricle. So the left ventricle is the most muscular. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. The left ventricle is the most muscular because think about what it does. I sort of mentioned it pushes oxygenated blood out of the aorta and then distributes it to the whole body. So that's that chamber that needs to pump blood everywhere in the body. It needs to be strong. So it's got the thickest layer of muscle. And you'll see that when you dissect them as well. Okay, I'm going to clear all the drawings and move on here. That's a big diagram right there. External heart anatomy. So things that we've mentioned. Let's do it this way. Things that we've mentioned include the superior vena cava. We've definitely mentioned that. That's this tube that drains, or veins. It's a vein that drains the head, neck, shoulders, and arms into the heart. We've also learned about the inferior vena cava, which returns blood from your bottom half of your body. We've talked about your right atrium, your right ventricle, and we've talked about your left ventricle and your left atrium. One thing we have not yet talked about is the apex. Now, the apex is the bottom point of the heart. So it's like right here. That's the apex. So it's not an actual point, but it comes to sort of a tapered off edge, and that's the apex. Other things to identify or that we've talked about the aorta. That's this thing that branches off. As I'd mentioned, I'll try to move this if I can. Nope. It branches off to the brachiocephalic. We haven't talked about that. That's like your arms. Your left subclavian, that's like your chest and shoulders, your clavicles. And then lastly, you have a branch that goes up to your head and neck called the common carotid artery. So it goes up your left side, into your brain, into your face, and provides blood to that. So three more to identify there. So we have brachiocephalic, subclavian, and left common carotid. Now we will talk about some of these other things as well, but we might as well give them, we'll describe them first before I just give you random terms to learn. Yeah, Now, to give you sort of a blood flow analysis here or description, your blood, deoxygenated blood comes into the heart from the superior and inferior vena cava and then reside in the right atrium. Blood then goes into the right ventricle and then gets pumped out upwards to the pulmonary trunk. Pulmonary means it deals with the lungs. Cardiac, anything cardiac, deals with the heart. Pulmonary deals with the lungs. So that blood leaves the heart and goes to the lungs to drop off carbon dioxide and pick up oxygen. It then picks up or delivers oxygen back to the heart on the right or left and right sides, and then comes back to the left atrium. Left atrium then pumps blood to the left ventricle area, which is right in here. And then the left ventricle pumps it upwards to the aorta, where it goes up to the head, neck, shoulders, the brain, and the arms, and then curls down behind. And in some diagrams, you'll also see the aorta down here. And that's called the descending aorta. But we're going to see a diagram like this many times. So this isn't going to be the only diagram you'll see about the heart. We'll give a lot of repetition so that we can explain things to you. And of course, if anybody just came into the room right now and saw this, they'd be like, what is going on? But the best thing you can do for any heart diagram is use your finger, and use your finger to sort of show the pathway of blood. Okay, let's clear this and move on to the next slide. Heart valves. So we'll probably do this and then end this off for today. Yeah, we'll do this slide in the next diagram, and then that'll be it. So heart valves, there are two types of heart valves. The first one are atrioventricular valves. Whew, that's a big word. Atrioventricular, 7-syllable word. But if you break down that word, you can identify pretty easily where the valves are. Atrioventricular. So they occur between the atrium and the ventricles. So they lie between the atrium and the ventricles on each side of the heart. So you have an atrioventricular valve, which we can shorten if we want. Let's do this. These are short form. You can call them AV valves. So they lie between the atrium and the ventricle on each side of the heart. There's a left AV valve and a right AV valve. The mitral valve lies between the left and the right ventricle. Just going to draw a small heart for you here. Ooh, that's red. Oh, that was not a good drawing. I went off. I'm sorry, guys. How come that one is very weird? Okay. Very bizarre. Okay, we'll stick with this. So if we broke up the heart like this, the mitral valve is going to be sort of a valve that occurs right here. This is the left side. So that's your mitral valve. You'll also have another AV valve or atrioventricular valve on the left side. Sorry, on the right side, and that's called the tricuspid valve. So you have the mitral valve on the left, tricuspid valve on the right. The mitral valve is sometimes called the bicuspid. So I can write that in for you as well. Sometimes called bicuspid. So if you see bicuspid, just remember it's a mitral valve. It's the same thing. Okay, so there are AV valves between the atrium and the ventricles. Left side is the mitral valve, right side is the tricuspid valve. And then there are semilunar valves, and semilunar valves are valves that leave, I'll do this in a different color, valves that leave the ventricles. So they will be here. So those are semilunar valves. And semilunar valves lie between the ventricle and the great vessel is what it's called on each side. So on the left side, it'll connect to the aorta, and on the right side, it'll connect to the pulmonary trunk or the pulmonary artery. So the aortic valve is on the left side. This is your aortic valve. And on the right side is called the pulmonary valve. So that's right there. So the pulmonary valve will go from the right ventricle to the pulmonary trunk or the pulmonary arteries. And the aortic valve will go from the left ventricle to the aorta. And it's just like we've talked about valves before that are that close off and open up in veins. These valves within the heart also open and close as well. So the valves control the flow of blood through the heart. We'll do one more slide that shows a diagram of the inside portion of the heart. And then that'll be it for today, because like we know that there's been a whole lot of info today, a lot. And today is another good day to start that 10 minutes of review of the information in biology. No, go back. There we go. So here's our internal view of the heart. This is actually a lot better in terms of identifying the flow of blood through the heart. So let's do that. So blood flows into the heart from the head, neck, and shoulders through the superior vena cava, and from the lower half of the body from the inferior vena cava. And they come into the right atrium. So then the right atrium pumps the blood past the AV valve or the tricuspid valve, which is right here. And blood flows this way into the right ventricle. The right ventricle then pushes blood upwards through this valve, the pulmonary valve. The pulmonary valve is just listed as a semilunar valve right here. But here's your pulmonary valve. And blood then leaves the heart going to the left lung and to the right lung. Blood will then return to the heart. I'll use a different color. Maybe it'll make it easier, maybe not. We'll see. Let's use yellow maybe. Blood returns to the heart from the pulmonary veins. Again, these are the only veins that are oxygenated. They get into the left atrium and they pass the mitral valve, which is right here, which is your left AV valve. And that's right here. And then blood goes from the left atrium to the left ventricle. The left ventricle will then pump underneath, it sort of goes underneath here and goes to the aorta, which then goes up and then around back and then down through the descending aorta. Kind of makes it a bit better when I use a different color, hey? A little bit. Now, what do I expect you to do? Absolutely take your finger and do that passageway. Like bring your finger from the superior and inferior, bring it from the top and bottom, go from your right atrium past the tricuspid valve to the right ventricle, then go up past the pulmonary valve to the pulmonary trunk, leave the heart, come back through the left atrium, past the mitral valve into the left ventricle, and then come up through the aorta. And then it should help with the flow of blood through the heart, because that's an important concept for this section. Any questions? All right, we'll stop there. We will start again with the passage of blood through the heart at our next class. But people at home, you can log off now, and you can contact me if you have any questions in chat in Teams.